Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Just give us a minute and we'll get started. We can just see the number of participants increasing. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar this evening, where we're going to be discussing studying medicine in the UK. I'm just going to give it another 20 more seconds before we get started. There's a lot we have to cover today, but I can see the number of participants increasing. So just give us another 10 more seconds and then we'll get started. Okay, great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. My name is Namita Mehta and I run the education counseling company called the Red Pen. We just celebrated our 12th birthday on Independence Day, the Indian Independence Day, a couple of days ago. We help students with education counseling at all levels of the education ladder. So we help with boarding school admissions, undergrad admissions, postgrad admissions, MBA admissions, and we even have a mentorship program for students in grades 8 to 10. We also work with several schools in India and internationally to help them with their college and college counseling departments. So thank you so much for joining us. Today, we're going to be speaking about studying medicine in the UK. And I have an amazing guest speaker with us today, Dr. Pradeep Khanna. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Dr. Pradeep Khanna, and as Namita states that I've been in the United Kingdom almost since 1977. So been here a long time indeed, having qualified from Armed Forces Medical College, Pune. That's not very far from most of the students, I suppose. And have had a very marvelous career in the sense that I was a senior clinician, head of department for a number of 20 years or so, assistant medical director, being a senior clinician. I was an educator at undergraduate, postgraduate. I've been an examiner at undergraduate and postgraduate, and even doctors who want to come from India to England. I've been doing interviews for medical students literally I did for about 10 to 12 years with Cardiff University. So I know exactly what they're looking for my efforts, because I did a lot of research. I was a clinical manager. I was an awarded MBE, which is like Padma Shri by the Queen at the Buckingham Palace, and also felicitated by the First Minister of Wales for the Lifetime Achievement Award. So I've had varied experience, as I mentioned, of almost 35, 40 years in the National Health Service in England. And I'm in a good position to be able to advise you as to how to attain your place in medical schools in England. The most important point of our coaching and teaching is that what we teach is not just about getting into medical education. It also teaches you for a lifetime how to become a better, good doctor. I'll leave it at that for the time being. Thank you, Namita.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khanna. It's an absolute honor to have you with us this evening. So for all the attendees, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what we're going to do today. I'm going to speak a little bit about studying medicine in the UK, a general overview, because there are going to be obviously some students that are considering it or just at the beginning of their journey. So I don't want them to be too lost. And then I want to do an exclusive question and answer session with Dr. Khanna and really ask him questions about life as a doctor, what examiners are looking for, what you really need to do to prepare, stuff that you're not going to find on any university website. or any of the other sanitized information that you might review. We're going to hear it directly from an examiner, from a doctor himself, someone who's served in the NHS for over 35 years. So that's going to be the chunk of the session today. And then we're going to have 2 mock interviews. We're going to have 2 questions that are coming up, the 2 actual questions that have come up in past interviews, and students are going to answer them live, and Dr. Khanna is going to give feedback. So today's session is really about digging deep, understanding what it really takes to get that seat to study medicine in the UK, and what not just getting the seat, but even what that whole experience entails, what kind of a life you're going to have as a doctor if you want to be a doctor in the UK. So that's the plan for today. But before we do that, I'm just going to give you a quick overview about the Red Pen, which is an education consulting firm. Like I mentioned, it's been around for 12 years. We have education counseling services with global expertise at all levels. So undergrad, postgrad, MBA, and some of the data points here show that we've had over admits to global destinations. We really focus on that, including India and abroad. We really do help students get the scholarships that they require as well. And most of our students are admitted to their top choice universities. This is just our track record of last year. You can see that many of our students have been admitted to some of the most highly selective universities around the world. We really pride ourselves on helping you put your best foot forward in the application process. And obviously today, the relevance is about medicine in the UK. So these are some of the universities that our students are studying medicine at in the UK. So we're very proud of this. We have a very strong team. We really work with students on a one-on-one bespoke basis, helping them get up to speed with the interview process, make sure that they have the right extracurricular activities, but I'll speak about that towards the end of the presentation. Okay, great. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview. I don't want to spend too much time on this because we need to hear from Dr. Khanna. He's our guest this evening, and he's going to share the real juicy parts of this process and life as a doctor. So outside of your home country, so whether you're studying, whether you've done your high school in India or Kenya or anywhere you might be, the most popular destination to study medicine after high school or grade 12 is the UK, primarily because you can go into the MBBS program directly after grade 12. Places like the US and Canada, you cannot apply directly for medicine. You have to do an undergraduate degree first, and medicine is a postgraduate program in those destinations. Medicine is considered a vocation in the UK. It's not a career. So just remember that when you're answering an interview or if you're speaking to doctors, you don't say it's a medical career, it's a vocation. There's about 30 universities in the UK that offer this MBBS program, and the MBBS education is pretty standardized across the country. So whether you go to Lancaster, whether you go to Oxford, or you go to Birmingham, the medical program is pretty standardized because it is governed by the GMC, which is the governing medical council, and even the NHS. And this is an interesting data point. There's about 352 seats for international students in all of the UK. So that's a very small number. So you can imagine that it's very competitive. And typically, the MBBS program lasts about 5 years in most universities, where it lasts about 6 years in universities like Oxford, Imperial, and UCL. And you graduate with a double degree. You will get a BSc and an MBBS. So a general overview, again, it's the National Health Service that manages the healthcare of the healthcare system in the UK, and the governing medical council that determines the medical education, and this is pretty standardized across the country. There are also universities that are privately that offer it privately, and they are also accredited, and you can apply to those outside of UCAS as well. So there are 2 points at which you can apply for a medical degree in the UK. One is right after grade 12, so that's the standard entry point. And then there's something called graduate entry medicine as well, where you can apply for a medical program or to the MBBS program after you've done your undergraduate degree as well. So that is very competitive. Some universities will require that you would have studied a science undergraduate degree, whereas other universities might ask you to there will be an exam as well. So again, if you have questions about graduate entry medicine, please put them in the chat, and we will certainly answer them. The tuition fee ranges from about £35,000 to about £60,000. It's a huge range because Cambridge is the most expensive medical program in the country. But this is just a ballpark figure for you. And the application process is pretty standardized. If you're applying for the MBBS after grade 12, you apply through the standardized process through UCAS. It's the same system that you would use to apply to any university for any program. But if you're applying, and you're allowed to apply to a maximum of 5 universities every year that you apply, but for medicine, you apply to 4 programs, and then the +1 would be a biochemistry, a biotechnology, a biomedical sciences, a biological sciences, something related. The reason they do that is because medicine is an extremely competitive program to get admission into. So they just want to make sure that you have one buffer choice. So if you don't get an offer from any of the 4 medical programs that you've applied to, at least you might have one offer to go off and do an undergraduate degree in a biomedical sciences. Now that rule applies to everyone, not just international students. So what do you need to study medicine in the UK? Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because Dr. Khanna is going to speak more about this. But the first thing that is really important are obviously the data. Your grades are extremely important. And in general, you will have to have biology and chemistry at the highest level in whatever curriculum you're studying. So if you're in the IB, they would expect it to be at higher level. If you're studying the A levels, you would have to take the whole A level. If you're doing a state board or a CBSE, you would have had to take that until grade 12 as well. In fact, chemistry is more important than biology, though many universities ask for both. There is an entrance, they're entrance tests. They're not necessarily entrance tests, but there are universities that ask for either the UCAT or the BMAT. These are tests that you need to take, and the scores that you achieve in these are very important. Many universities will look at these scores and then decide whether they want to invite you for interview or not. So the data is the most important, and it's kind of the foundation of your application. Doing amazing extracurricular activities and putting in an amazing personal statement will not substitute for data points. So just remember that that's really, really important. In fact, universities in the UK are pretty transparent. They will tell you what the minimum entry requirement is for MBBS at their particular university. So if your predicted grade is less than that, do not apply. The other thing that is important is obviously the application material. You will be asked to write a personal statement. So what you put in the personal statement is really important. And I'm going to let Dr. Khanna talk a little bit about that as we proceed with this webinar. And the one of the things that I want to talk about is, of course, relevant extracurricular activities. So, shadowing a doctor is not as an extracurricular activity, working in a hospital and shadowing the most well-known cardiologist in town is not really considered extracurricular. It's not considered a relevant extracurricular activity. Of course, that's going to give you an idea of what it takes to study medicine, but what they're really looking for are opportunities for you to work with patients that need care. So if you can work in an old age home, if you can actually work with children that have disabilities, where you can show skills like compassion, care, motivation, and that you understand what it takes to be a doctor. So again, Dr. Khanna is going to talk about that, but that is really crucial. And universities also love students that have done some kind of medical research. So if you are in the IB program, doing an extended essay, or if you're in the A-level program, picking up an EPQ in a science subject where you've had the opportunity to dig a little deeper, do some research, and understand how that is related to medicine. Universities really love that. So a brief timeline of how it works. I'm going to start this. So this June is the June before your grade 12 or your year 13. So typically UCAT registrations open. That's one of the tests that I said you need to take. You will take your UCAT around July to September. 15th October is the deadline for application. You put in your UCAS form, and you can also register for the BMAT at that point in time. So when you put in your UCAS form, you choose your 4 medical programs plus your 5th one, and you send it in with your personal statement. Your teachers will upload the predicted grades and the letter of recommendation, and it goes. So the deadline is 15th of October of grade 12. So if you're a current grade 12 student, this is just around the corner. And then typically when you do the UCAT, usually have the UCAT score in your hand before you apply. But if you're looking at applying to universities that are asking for the BMAT, which I believe this is the last year that universities are going to be asking for the BMAT, they're going to scrap that exam. But if you're applying this year, this is relevant. You apply for your universities without your BMAT score in your hand. So that's just something to think about. You will sit the BMAT exam in November. So based on your UCAS application, which involves your personal statement, your grades, your letters of recommendation, you are invited for an interview. There are two types of interviews that you might have to take part in. One is a mini medical interview where you'll go from one station to another and they test different skills, and another one is a panel discussion. So universities are pretty transparent about which kinds of interview they offer. And then the biggest hurdle is getting the conditional offer after interview. So if you're applying to 4 medical schools and you get 2 interviews and then you end up with 1 offer, this is a very typical situation. It's very rare to get all 4 universities that invite you for an interview and then convert all 4 into an offer. The interviews take place anytime between November and April, so it is a bit of a waiting game, unfortunately. And then they give you a conditional offer, and you have to meet those conditions before your admission is secured. So that's just an overview. I'm now going to move into the questions for Dr. Khanna, because I think this is really where we can get into the detail about life as a doctor, what it takes. So let's get started. So Dr. Khanna, can you share with us what's your favorite part of being a doctor?
Wow. Well, one thing I can assure everyone that life is never dull being a doctor. It's very challenging, very rewarding, but it's a huge privilege and an honor, because you can make a difference in a suffering person's life, and that is your ultimate reward. The most important point which comes to mind is that we are the most trusted people in the whole wide world. If you ever Google it, whether it's USA, UK, India, who do the general population trust the most? It's always the nurses and the doctors. So that gives you a lot of reward and satisfaction in your life. But other things are that if you're a people-oriented person, you enjoy working with people, this is the profession for you, because you're working with people as part of a team all the time, and you're practicing what we call evidence-based medicine. So the research tells us exactly what medical treatments to be done, and in the United Kingdom, you have to follow that. As Namita quickly stated, that it's a vocation. Vocation means it's a way of life. Yes, it's a career, but not so much as it's a way of life. It becomes part of you to be able to work, do the things which I just mentioned. And also, I know that in professions, one also looks at money. And to a certain degree, you get that satisfaction as well. Because again, if you look across the world, you're in the 1% to 2% top earners. Of course, you can make more money in other professions, but that's not the real reason why you should be joining medicine. So to me, is, as I mentioned, that it's a challenging, always revolving evidence coming through, and you learn and you have lifetime learning all your life. I'll stop at that, Namita.
Thank you for that, Dr. Khanna. Okay, so can you tell us one aspect of medical education in the UK that surprised you the most?
Yes, I mean, when I joined medicine in India, for instance, the MBBS was very similar to any other degree you did. It gave you a good knowledge of the subject, but it didn't prepare you to become what you are, what you have to deal with. So the one thing which we all believe in, that medicine is as much as about art of practicing as the scientific knowledge that you need to have. And I think the education in medical schools in the United Kingdom have balanced this very well indeed. And from day one, you start interacting with your clients and your patients, along with the scientific knowledge that you are gaining to be good, efficient doctors. So I think if you look at the qualities of a good doctor, and the ones which I'm going to mention also form part of your personal statement, which you mentioned earlier, is what do you need to have the qualities of a good doctor. And these are all covered over the 5 years when you take medical education. So that's about leadership, self-learning, being a part of a team, being resilient, have lifelong learning and practicing evidence-based medicine, being a good clinician, being a teacher, trainer, educator, examiner, researcher. So it's multifaceted. It's not just about practicing medicine. Good communication skills, which means listening along with being able to communicate. And as you already mentioned, it's vocation rather than career. So they teach you about the value of empathizing with somebody, which is very different to sympathizing. And empathizing means that you empathize and you get in other person's shoes and understand exactly what they're going through. Along with this, they also teach you that you must not do, if you can't do any good to a patient, do no harm and know your limitations and seek help when you have to. And always respect the patient's autonomy, patient's choice, listen to them. And finally, that as any career and as a human person, doctors will make mistakes. And one has to be humble to recognize that and be able to learn to apologize to the patient and learn from it so that that mistake is not repeated the second time. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to move into something a bit more about the application process. So how much reading do you need to do for the admissions process? And a lot of students often ask us, should you be just focusing on one medical area or should you looking at several different topics?
Well, as you mentioned initially, Namita, rightfully so, that it's a very competitive world out there to get into medicine, whether it's in India or United Kingdom. Again, in United Kingdom, this is where majority of the maximum competitiveness comes in to get into a place in medical school. So one has to be really well read in general sense, because the students which come are the cream of the nation, no question about it. So the students who wish to do medicine, whether they are in India or UK, are really, scientifically, work-wise, ready to undertake the course, the study which they're going to do. But what makes you come out better is if you have a good general knowledge about the world around yourself, be multifaceted, have extracurricular activities along with that, read about the healthcare systems across the world, be able to discuss what's the difference between the healthcare system in United States, India, United Kingdom, Canada, France. So it gives you an idea how is it managed, the same amount of money across the world. So you have a better understanding of healthcare system. And also read about the National Health Service. What's its history? When was it formed? Who formed it? What is the ethos behind it? Why is it so successful? What are its pitfalls? And along with that, one has to, at a very young age, and I would advise year 11 and year 12 students to at least read one scientific journal. So you have to have a very wide knowledge, in my view.
Perfect. I think this leads perfectly into the next question. How do you stay updated with the latest medical advancements and research? You mentioned something about medical journals. How do you get access to that?
Okay, so basically, it's well known amongst doctors that if you don't work for 6 months or you don't keep yourself up to date for 3 to 6 months, you are no more a good physician or be able to practice medicine. So one has to keep ourselves all the time up to the mark, as one might say. So how do I do it? Well, I read journals regularly. And so the ones which I read is usually the British Medical Journal or this Lancet, and which are available online, but maybe too early for medical students to read. But they could easily go into the British. There's a student medical journal as well. And I mentioned the Young Scientist is a good journal to read. Along with that, we attend conferences on a regular basis. We attend postgraduate meetings in our hospitals, which are just not your subject, but maybe I'm a physician, for instance, but I will still attend postgraduate meetings in surgery and gynecology or ophthalmology, so as to keep yourself updated, because it's all related in some way or the other. And also we have regular Zoom meetings with colleagues in the same specialty as mine, discussing difficult cases or seeking views, and that keeps your mind ticking, because somebody has seen it somewhere else, which may be the first time I'm seeing that sort of a case. So it's a similar things. I mean, it's very practical in that sense. The system doesn't change. So my advice to students at this stage would be, just for like I mentioned, two things might be important. One is reading the student BMJ, which is, I believe, online, there's available online, and also through the library or wherever, reading The Young Scientist.
Okay, super. So I hope you noted that. It's the journal and reading Young Scientist. Okay, so can you please share any memorable or unusual interview questions you asked as an examiner?
Yeah. These questions are only asked, unusual ones, if a person's doing very well or not doing so well. So you want to give them a chance to see whether how mature they are and can they think. So in these things, what we tend to do is we tend to ask negative questions, or shall we say opposite to what people are expecting. So for instance, recently there's been a COVID epidemic. If I asked what has been the disasters of COVID, almost everybody can answer that. So to put them on the, making them think on the spot, one question I asked was, what are the benefits the world has had from a COVID epidemic? So immediately the mind goes blank. But if the person, and this is one of the learning process as well for interviews, you take your time, don't be stumped, you will come up with good answers. For instance, just to give you 3 benefits. Number 1, it has shown the inequality in the world. Some people have more money, less money, and that has highlighted to the government that they must spend more money on healthcare. Number 2, for the first time, the whole world worked together to form a vaccine quickly. So there was some teamwork across the countries. Number 3, for the first time ever, vaccines which took 20 years to produce, they were produced in 6 months. So it's changed life forever. And I can go on and go. I can give you 20 advantages of having an epidemic. So, this is a question. Sometimes we ask negative questions, opposite to what people are prepared for, just to put them on the spot, just to say, is the person very, very nervous? Let's ask them a difficult question and their maturity will come through. The second question we sometimes ask is, if you have 10 million, if you become the health minister of the country and I give you 100 million pounds, how will you sort out the issues of the healthcare system in the world, in your country? Again, it's a mature question. If I asked you, Namita, you might for a minute stumble, where will you spend the money? But then if you look at why the healthcare system fails in any country, the answer becomes simple, and that is inequality. Inequality means being rich or poor. If you're rich, you can get healthcare service anywhere in the world. If you're poor, where do you go for your medical health service? So inequality has to be sorted out. So I would say, as a mature person today, I would spend it on social care. I won't spend it on healthcare. I will make people's lifestyle better, get them more income so that they can start eating better, not smoking. You understand what I'm saying? So sometimes you ask these sort of questions, which some students who don't think I answer straight away will say we'll get more doctors or we'll get more hospital beds, which may work for a little while, but not for too long. And I'll give you a third one is, again, saying, if you enter a hospital ward, a ward in any hospital, how do you know that this ward is working well compared to another ward you go to? So we're looking at observational skills. Do you find that the nurses are happy and smiling and patients are joking with them? Is there a smell of urine or feces? Is there a lot of thank you cards? So we're looking, you understand? So it's a way of making students, and that's the way we sort of, when we do it through Red Pen, train students, that's the way we train them. So start thinking widely, not just it's more of a conversation with the interviewer. It's not an exam. They're not looking to stump you in any way. They're trying to find out what sort of person you are. So that's the third question which comes to me. Then the fourth one is against negative. What is the negativeness of being a doctor? I think it's not a good career. Why are you here? So just to see how they respond. Yeah, and they talk about the rewarding and the challenging, but they say, yes, we understand the negatives of being a doctor. That is, you need time management, resilience, perseverance with what you're doing. You need to do multifaceted jobs at the same time. So again, that gives you a good idea of the person as to how mature they are as a student. I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea of the difficult questions that people can be asked.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. These are tough questions. And as a grade 12 student, to be asked something like that in the middle of an interview can be quite nerve-wracking. So we really do.
Namita, that is one thing I need to stress to your audience, and that is that it's slightly unfair in the sense for the students, because the questions which are being asked are very similar to a very senior doctor that questions are being asked. But the thing is that there is more allowance of people making mistakes. You understand? But the questions are very similar. So that's why I think most people stumble at the interview level, is because they are not prepared. And that is what Red Pen offers.
No, thank you, Dr. Khanna. I mean, we really spend a lot of time with each and every one of our prospective medics, going through questions again and again, getting them to repeat parts, getting them to rethink if they stumble, ask questions again after a week so that they get a chance to think about it. And that's really what we do. But, just for everybody in the audience today, these are some of the questions that are asked. And one of the things that I noticed is that the questions that are asked that are challenging are not necessarily content or biology or chemistry questions. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that they're going to be able to see from your UCAS form, your predicted grade. I mean, that's kind of the baseline. They know that you know enough chemistry, they know that you know bio, but they're really testing your people skills. Do you have the heart? Do you have the compassion to be a doctor? Are you really going to be able to, when you walk into that ward, how are you going to be able to tell whether patients are happy? Do you have that empathetic quality? And I think that's the kind of crux of it. But we'll move on, and I'm sure Dr. Khanna will talk more about that. Okay, so there's been a few questions about this already on the Q&A, and I can see that our colleagues have answered. But there are over 30 medical MBBS programs in the UK. How do we actually choose, Dr. Khanna, the four medical colleges that a student should apply to?
Right. Again, you touched upon it, Navita, in a nice way. And that is that the General Medical Council has been fairly, shall I say, one needs to congratulate them in making sure that medical education across the medical college is standardized. And the whole system of examination is also standardized at all levels. So as far as medical education is concerned, you will receive good medical education in any of the medical schools. But what happens is that you need to, in a way, also know what you want. For instance, some medical schools are standalone medical schools. They're away from the universities. And some medical schools are attached to universities. So there you meet students from art, from social sciences, engineering. So you have a wider friendships and wider way of learning and thinking. So it depends what suits you the way you want it to be. So for instance, both my children are doctors here. And having been to a private school, they felt, no, Dad, I would like to go to a wider universities, for instance, where they have multifaceted. So we want to meet people from outside a small private school sector. So like Cambridge and Oxford, where they could have gone, they said no, because that is very much like a private school, small groups, not interacting with other careers going across the universities. The other factor is how comfortable are you living in a large town or a city. So for instance, if you want a city life, then of course London, Birmingham, Manchester, the big cities are there. But if you want to go to smaller towns, then it's like Bournemouth, Exeter, Cardiff. So it depends what you're comfortable with and what the university, and you must read what the university is offering you. Because you will come across certain things which will immediately attract you, saying, I think I can settle there. Because it's not an easy, almost 6 years, 5 to 6 years you're spending there. So you need to be comfortable, not just in a medical education, but also where you are living. And also, like Namita, you mentioned, very rightfully so, that you need to, and your team has the knowledge of it, that which medical colleges are more competitive than others. So you have to give one choice to not such a competitive one. Just if you don't make it in those three, then there's a higher chance of getting into fourth. So you've got to hedge your bets a bit as well.
I just want to say that it's all very competitive. We can say maybe a handful are less competitive than the others. Yes, so it's not like you can walk in.
No, that's exactly.
Dr. Khan, I just wanted you to touch upon, certain medical degrees are a little bit more theoretical in the first couple of years, while some are a little bit more practical. Do you think that is also something students should think about when they're looking at which universities to apply to?
Sorry, say that again. I got distracted because suddenly my
No,
iPad is
no
showing.
problem. So some medical programs in the UK are a little bit more theoretical in the first 2-3 years versus others give you like hospital experience right away. So the way the programs are designed.
Exactly. Yeah. You're very right. So, I mean, more and more now I'm going towards starting with clinical aspects on day one. So some are making those changes. But certainly, in my view, the advantage is on those ones which are integrated between clinical as well as, theory.
Yeah, some of the traditional universities, like I think Oxford, Cambridge, and
Yeah.
UCL or King's, one of the two. It's a 6-year program, so you end up also getting a BSc because they want you to have that learning and that focus on research and science as well, right?
Yeah, but all medical schools do offer you, even if they don't have already in the program. And I would advise people to do it if you're affordable, because you again have to spend for 1 year, and that is a major factor if you're coming from India. But if you can, then 6 years is a perfect way to do it because you get a BSc behind your name as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Also, one more thing I just wanted to also stress on is, just a more practical reason of what kind of colleges to look at. If you're giving the UCAT exam, you get a score, and then you also get something called a SJT number band. So situational judgment test band 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now, 1 is the highest and 4 is the lowest. And if you get a 3 or a 4, you might want to look at universities that do not consider the SJT as part of the assessment. I mean, again, this is getting very nitty gritty, but we really want to optimize your chances of admission. So if you have a band 3 or a band 4 in your SJT, sometimes we recommend that you look at universities or medical schools that don't really consider this in their application process. And again, at the Red Pen, we've done thorough research. We are aware about which medical programs in the UK are looking at what kind of a UCAT score, what kind of a BMAT score, and whether the SJT matters or not. But again, this is very, very nitty gritty. And if you haven't understood what I've said, don't worry about it. It's really for students that are applying this year and are making their choices now. Okay, so Dr. Khanna, what are the 3 most important skills that medical schools are looking for in applicants? If you had to kind of bring it down to 3, I know there are several, but what is...
Many. Yeah, I mean, I think we've touched upon them in my first answer where I was talking about the qualities of a good doctor. So it comes from there, most of them. So I think the number one they're looking is motivation and commitment, because it's a strenuous course and they want to know that that person is resilient to be able to keep motivating themselves and keep committing themselves, because it's a lot of medical education indeed which goes through. And then also they're looking, are they able to do self-learning and take initiatives on their own, which is very important for them. So that's the main 2. And then from there comes the third aspect, which you touched upon, which is being a caring person. So they want to know that if a patient or somebody is suffering, will this person stand up and hold their hand or put an arm around them? Does he have that caring? So these are the 3 most important, I would say, but I'll just add good communication and time management also into it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Dr. Khanna. Okay, so again, back to the interviews. What are the 3 top most common mistakes that students make during interviews and that we should 100% avoid? Everybody, please listen to this answer.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is, like I said before, it's a conversation. It's not an exam. They're not trying to catch you out. Smile, relax. It's not an exam. Again and again, I'll say that. Now coming to the 3 points. Number 1 is that the answer is never a yes or no. If you say yes or no, you must go ahead and say why no. And I always advise people, read the editorial of a good newspaper, the middle section of the newspaper, of a good newspaper. There's always a debate there about some current issue. So what happens there? They give a for, they give against argument, then they give their own opinion. And that is the way you have to answer the question. My advice to students always has been, that you take your parents and start discussing, should we use this toothpaste, for instance? Why not use another toothpaste? A simple thing. And you have to give for, against, and your own views. Or you have 100 rupees. What should I do with that? Should I spend it? There are three options: spend it, save it, or give it to somebody else. And so, you get into a way of stating your answers in a way that you give for, against, and your measured opinion as to, and that's an informed decision you're coming to, because there's no correct or wrong answer. Whether it's 100 kidneys to 10 heart transplants, nobody says which is the right answer. It's the way you express yourself they're looking at. Okay. Second major mistake people do is they rush into their answers. They have not properly listened to the question which has been given to them. So they go off on a wrong subject altogether, not addressing the topic the question has been framed at. So sometimes they miss that important point the interviewer is looking at. So please listen to the question very, very carefully. And the third, which is that no interviewer wants to see a negativity from the student. So for instance, if they say that you're a good at sportsman, you're good in dramatics, and you've got an exam coming, how will you manage all three? They don't want to hear, I'll give up this and I'll give up that. They want to see how you will manage it, right? So it's all, because that is what medicine is about. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm a clinician, I'm an educator, I'm a researcher, I'm a manager, I'm a mentor of somebody. I have to manage my time in all senses. Yeah, I've got to give time to communication with the patients when they're wanting me to. So there's always constraints on your time, and you find how to prioritize and how to manage all aspects. So they don't want to see any negativity. So please don't be negative, right? Because that is what medicine is about. And as I mentioned to you before, if you're not prepared, you will not give informed answers. Your answers have to be informed. For, against, my opinion. For, against, and start practicing with your friends and family on a simplest thing. Should we have orange juice or coffee? Nothing, doesn't matter. Just simple things, and it'll become part of your way to answer questions. Because everything has positives, everything has negatives.
Perfect. This was such a good insight. Thank you, Dr. Khanna. It just made me think of A-level history. So I studied A-level history. I know that has nothing to do with medicine, but when we had those open-ended questions, they always said, to some extent, I agree with the statement. To some extent, I do not. And this is my evidence for. So again, that's like a way of thinking is what they're trying to get you to do, because there is no real answer in medicine. And one of the strange questions that some of our students have been asked in the past is something like, if you could save two babies and give them a heart transplant, or you could give like 100 people a hip replacement, what would you do, right? Again, you don't choose one or the other. You kind of explain the pros and the cons of doing something and then kind of get into that answer. It's hard. It takes a bit of practice, but that's exactly what we do at the Red Pen. We really
and again, you don't make the decision yourself. You make it as part of a team.
Yeah.
So all that, and then the informed bit comes in, because then if you're part of a team, people will mention the pros and the against, and you make it as a collective decision.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Khanna. So this is the last question before we move into the mock interviews. So what advice do you have for prospective medical students? We've got over 70 students online today who have come to listen to you, which is great. So what piece of advice can you give them so that they're successful in this process?
My advice is this: there's no profession like medicine. Don't just, if you have the abilities and the attributes, don't even look elsewhere. It's a very satisfying, very rewarding career in every sense. And for to get into medicine, my advice is prepare. Read and read, discuss. And don't be put off. You'll get there. All of us have been there. And as I mentioned, preparation is the key. It's never enough. And become a general. The people are looking in UK, they're looking for not bookworms, they're looking for all-roundedness. So read as widely as you can. And I always say, one of my favorite movies in India was Tere Mere Sapne, because that gives you a little aspect of what medicine is about. It was copied from a book called Citadel It's worth reading, and was set up in a small village in Wales. And was, you know, so it gives you a little perspective what medicine is about. So the wider you read, the better you become.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Khanna. So we're going to move on to the mock interview part of the webinar as well. So we're going to pose a question. Dr. Khanna is going to read it out, and then there's going to be a student who's going to answer live. We're going to have a poll, and then Dr. Khanna is going to give feedback. And we're going to do that for 2 questions before we move into a Q&A. I can see many of you are asking lots of questions in the Q&A chat, and my colleagues are responding to them, but we will answer a few of them live because we can see a lot of repeat questions as well. All right, so Dr. Khanna, I'm going to hand it to you for the first interview question.
Right, so this first question is on an moral and ethical issue. So your best friend has shared his anguish at not being prepared enough for his next examination, and therefore is planning on cheating. How would you manage the situation? This is the question. Is someone prepared to answer this?
Anushri, can you answer, please?
Yes. So I think personally, I would first advise my friend against cheating. I would offer my help if they needed any help studying. I would tell them that cheating would go against the ethical rule. They would go against the ethical your ethical side, and it would be against the rules as well. And if they really needed help cheating, I would offer that. If they needed help in studying for the exam, I would offer that as well. I would also explain to them that I think if you were to cheat, you would never learn the syllabus properly, or you would never learn what you needed to become a doctor. So I would be there and support them to study for the exam.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. That's a good answer. The basic thing is the question was about integrity and probity. So integrity means that you're true to your own morals, and you're honest, absolutely. Nobody can corrupt you. And probity is that is honesty for all, everyone. So the question what is trying to ask you is that rightfully so, you would tell your friend regarding the importance and of not cheating, along with providing some solution that we will help you, we will train you, we will all spend time with you, etc. Yeah, but making sure that you also tell them that look for the wider good of other students, etc. Yeah, this is no way to you're taking advantage against the others. And if this question was slightly differently framed and said, would you then tell the people about her cheating? Then then it becomes your issue of saying probity comes in, and you have to your student, I'm sorry, I will have to let the people know that you cheated in the exam. You understand what I'm saying? So that's what they're looking for, because you will come across this situation all your life, that people, in doctors even, they make mistakes and they change their records, for instance, and they are your best friends. You have to stand up and say that this was a wrong thing you're doing. You cannot do this. So this question was all about integrity and probity. And I would ask you to read about separately what integrity means, what probity means. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Anushri. That's really brave of you. Thank you for taking the time to answer our question.
I'm going to slightly move because my battery is failing. I don't know what's happened. So I'm just moving very quickly. Just
yes,
1
Dr.
second.
Khanna. Yes, we'll wait. I'm going to put the next question up so people can read it, and then we can... So the next question, I will just read it out. It's a conflict resolution question. A man has been waiting in emergency for 4 hours with his aged father who has fallen in the bathroom and is bleeding in the head. He comes to you angrily and starts shouting at you. How would you manage this situation? If you can, everybody can please answer the poll, that would be fantastic. And may I please invite Janvi to answer this question? Janvi, are you ready?
Yeah, I am.
All right, we'll
All
just
right.
give Dr. Khanna a second. He's just sitting down, and then you can
Okay,
answer.
I'm
Give him-
okay.
All right,
I'm
there he is. Great. Thank you, Janvi. Please go ahead.
All right. So if I were put in this situation and I would see this man come up to me and start screaming, my first idea would be to try and minimize the conflict. If I'm in a place where I'm surrounded by other patients, I would definitely try my best to first calm the man down and take him to a private place so that we can have a conversation, and so that other patients don't look at what's happening and start, questioning how the hospital is running or have any effect on their trust towards the healthcare system. Once I brought the person to a private area and, of course, I've tried to calm them down, my idea would be to listen to what they have to say. A lot of times you are basically, giving an olive branch if you just make the person feel heard. So you understand their complaints, you understand what has gone wrong. I would apologize for the system. I wouldn't take the blame completely on myself if I'm not aware of what has happened yet. So I would definitely apologize for the waiting time. I would explain that, patients are triaged when they come into the A&E. So as much as I will want to make the patient comfortable, I would try my best to make them feel a little more comfortable in that position. I would not be able to say that, oh, I will put them right in the front of the list, or I will take care of them right now. So I would explain the process to them, apologize, of course, because this man is obviously going to be very worried that his father is injured, he's bleeding in the head, and he's obviously had to wait a long time. So compassion and empathy would take me a long way. But of course, I can't make any false promises. So I have to be very careful on how I tread the line there.
Right. Yeah. Well answered. Just a few comments here. So very rightfully, you said you'll calm them down. Yeah. I was running about a bit to get my charger. So I don't know whether you said you will say sorry for the wait. I don't know whether you said that, but you will apologize and say we are very sorry. But as you can see, we are overworked and there's a lot more patients around. Yeah. And so in a way, you are saying sorry, apologizing, and then you are very quickly explaining the issue, why this time has taken, why it's taken so long. You will then urgently assess them and manage the urgent issue. For his bleeding, so you would put a compression bandage to stop the bleeding, for instance. Yeah. And if they're in pain, you might give them simple painkillers like paracetamol, whatever. Yeah. But because to know if there are other complications from the fall, you will say like you will be assessed as soon as your turn comes. But you are right to say that you can't jump the queue unless it's a real emergency. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for Janvi for answering that live. Thank you. I hope that gives all of you on the call a little bit of a flavor of how some of these interview questions are asked and what kind of a response would be ideal, right, as a candidate. This was just a taster. So yeah. All right, I'm going to move into the Q&A in a second, but before I do that, I want to quickly tell you about what your medical journey would look like if you enrolled with us at the Red Pen, if you're interested in studying medicine. I just want to say that I think, we have a fantastic team. Dr. Khanna is part of our team, and he does kind of get involved in the interview process, as well. We really spend a lot of time with each of our students to make sure that at every part of the process, you're getting the best advice and that you are getting the best training, if I may say so. So the first thing that we do when students enroll with us is we make sure that you have the right kind of activities that you are doing to be a competitive medical applicant, right? So again, like I said, just shadowing a doctor is not good enough. Doing a few online courses, potentially doing some kind of research, and even working with patients directly, whether you go to a cancer ward or an old age home, is something we recommend and we expect you to do. In fact, that is extremely crucial. So we give advice on work experience as well. The Red Pen does not offer entrance test support, so we don't actually help students with UCAT preparation or BMAT preparation, but we do work with other leading partners that do that. In fact, there is a company based in the UK that only does Oxford Cambridge test preparation, LNAT preparation, that's for law, and BMAT and UCAT. And we really do trust them. So we introduce you to them, or you're welcome to find your own your own test prep tutor if you want. But there was a question about, should you prepare for the test? Absolutely, you should prepare for the test, because that is an important part of this process. And you could have an amazing personal statement, but if your test doesn't go that well, you're not necessarily going to get invited for an interview. Part of the process is also shortlisting your universities, the 4 universities that you want to apply to. We really go deep in. We, look at your UCAT score, look at your personal statement, look at your predicted grade, and then help you choose the 4 to apply to with a lot of strategy. It's not easy to find the range of UCAT scores that universities are looking for, but we try and dig for that information, and then we share that with you. We do help you edit your personal statement. We will not write it for you. It has to be your voice, but there is a specific format that we do recommend, and we do want you to follow that. And you do need to have some of the keywords and the buzzwords in the personal statement. So we help you with that. And then, of course, there's the interview preparation. That is something we start with most of our students 8 to 9 months in advance. We do not wait for you to get an interview invite, because sometimes you get the interview invite and it's 10 days later. So we cannot do all this preparation in 10 days time. We really start by 8 months in advance, slowly getting you to do reading. We might even focus on one particular area like conflict resolution, and then we do lots of questions on that. Or we might focus on the NHS and do questions on that. So there's a process, and then we mix them up, and then we do mock interviews. There's other members from our team that will give you mock interviews, so you're not used to the same person asking you the same time. But that essentially, in a nutshell, is the Red Pen's UK medical support program. So if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You will get an email to book an appointment to learn more about this process from our counselor. So please register for that, and you will get someone to tell you more about the fees of that program as well. Okay, super. So we do have, we're doing pretty well on time. So, well, actually, we've got 4 more minutes left. I think we can overrun a few more minutes, but I do want to answer some of the questions. So I'm going to ask you, Dr. Khanna. Okay, so one of the questions that I want to ask, this has come up twice, is can you apply to other UK colleges outside the UCAS? Can you do that?
Sorry, I don't understand the question. I'm so sorry.
Yes, that's okay. Can you apply to other UK colleges outside the UCAS application?
Outside the UCAS?
I can answer that question. So yes. Yeah, So typically there are private universities in the UK that you can apply to outside of the UCAS as well. So that includes Brunel, Buckingham, and UCLan. These are all accredited. So you could apply to 4 on UCAS and then these ones outside of UCAS. I hope that answers your question. There were about 2 people that asked that question.
Yeah, that's true. That's correct.
All right. So this is for you, Dr. Khanna. What is the path ahead after MBBS? Is it easy to specialize in MS or MD?
Yes, so the system here is very different to the system in India. So once you choose your specialty in UK and you're working in it, while you're working, you do your, so there's no number of places that you have for MD or MS. So if you're a doctor, say in surgery, any doctor who's working in surgery can start doing their post-graduation in surgery. Similarly in psychiatry or medicine. And so post-graduation is very much up to you and how much time are you able to give it. So it's not like you're chosen to do an MD or MS like it happens in India. But it prepares you very well to go ahead and do your post-graduation while you're in the United Kingdom.
Okay, and what about the entry into the NHS? Do most doctors find an opening? So as an international student, I assume that
we are very short of doctors, huge shortage of doctors, and literally people are walking into United Kingdom now. And so as long as you've done your university training here and you meet the criteria, I feel that there's a huge opportunity to stay on in the United Kingdom.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Dr. Khanna. So there's a couple of folk that have their hands up. So I'm going to unmute them so that they can ask their questions live. So there's Kalpana Rao. Can we unmute her so she can ask the question? Kalpana, go ahead.
Hi, Doc. I wanted to ask for both of you all. So, as
Sure.
you said, I asked this even in written. I didn't get the proper answer that I'm asking this. So, as in India, we have this craze. You finish your MBBS, then do your specialization for 2 years or so, and that adds value to you professionally as well as for your earning capacity point of view. So, in UK, how do you recommend that one? I mean, is it okay to just do MBBS and leave it, or you recommend somebody does PG also so that it adds value? I mean, I'm asking you, doctor, from your experience point of view. I'm taking into account for my daughter who's planning to take up this, and the support from Red Pen on this. So then I would want to know what would be the journey, the number of years.
Sure. So, like I explained to you, in India, it's a very clear that you again have to do an examination to be chosen for MD and MS. And that's a system in India. Here, there is nothing like that. So, if you're in United Kingdom and you're working here, because there's a criteria that you have to do so many years of training before you can start doing your examination, which is not very long, depends on each and every specialty. Then you can, while you're working, while you're earning, you on your own with help from your hospital, because they give you some funds for medical education and going for courses, you do your post graduation on your own. And there are
Okay.
like coaching, and so and yes, it definitely adds value if you go anywhere. If you, for instance, if you have your MRCP in medicine and you go back to UK, it's very well recognized in India as well as in the private sector, because not only does it teach you about medicine, but it makes you a better postgraduate doctor. So yes, definitely it adds value, and how long it takes you is very much on the individual, how much time they're able to afford while they're working to do their post-graduation as well. So it depends where you want to live in the end, whether you want to go back to India, it adds value. If you stay here, you have to have post-graduation to become a consultant in the hospital in the United Kingdom.
No, she plans to stay there. So keeping that in view, in UK itself. So it's a 5-year MBBS course, then a 2-year residency. During residency, the person can do a post-graduation, and which could be a 1-year, 3-year, or a 4-year, as what I see
Yeah.
somebody
No, as soon as
answered.
as soon as residency, what we call internship, finishes over 2 years, you can start looking into starting your postgraduate examinations. As long as you be.
Yeah, sorry, Dr. Khanna. I know we're already over time, and there's a few others who have some questions as well. I didn't mean to cut you, Kalpana, but we really have to move on. And so I'm going to unmute Raja Kumar and let them ask their question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. First, thank you, Dr. Khanna, for your time, and it was really good. We got a lot of insights into how the admission and what is being expected from students. So thank you really for your time, and thanks, Namita, for arranging this. I have just a couple of questions. One is related to UCAT and BMAT. I mean, there are some colleges which give emphasis only for BMAT and some for UCAT. Where only a few of the sections are kind of common between these two, where BMAT also has a lot of sections which is specific to subjects. So if you don't have a good UCAT score, let's say, what would be the deciding factor to see if we should do the BMAT, give a try on the BMAT, which is going to come a few months down the line? Will it be a good strategy? This is my first question. I have another question which is on the foundation. So what would be the deciding factor to see if we should also take the foundation route? Thank you.
Dr. Khanna? Okay, maybe he might have disappeared. Okay, when it comes to UCAT and BMAT prep, my advice is that you have to do some practice tests, first of all, and see how you're faring. Now, typically, the universities that are asking for a BMAT are the much more competitive ones. Their entry requirements are much higher. So Again, this has to be a very strategized thought process. So it's not like, okay, if I do badly on my UCAT, I'll just now spend 2 months preparing for my BMAT and I can do well. In fact, lots of students strategize and they only look at UCAT colleges or they only look at BMAT colleges. Some look at a combination. But we really want to optimize the time that you have. So preparing for both the tests simultaneously is not something that we always recommend. But of course, if certain students are very clear that they want to attend a university that requires the BMAT, then they would also prepare for that. But again, you do need the subject knowledge. You're right. The BMAT is a little bit more subject specific. So I hope that answers your question. It's very case by case as well. So, we would definitely help you with that and counsel students on that. Yeah, hope that answers your question. So, okay, I'm going to have the last question before we end today because we're already over time. So, Neil Mani, if you want to just unmute yourself and ask their question.
Hello.
Hey, hi.
Yeah,
Hi.
hi.
So,
Hi.
yeah, so my question was around one was the cost, but I think this was answered. And the second was
Hello.
Yeah, hi. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, I wanted to ask, my daughter is in 12th right now and looking at medicine as a career, either India or UK.
Yes.
She is for her NEET, but at the same time, we've registered for UCAT, where she has her date in September, but we've not really got the time to prepare well for it. Now, either we take a gap year next year if we decide not to go for India, is what our plan is. Right now she'll just give an exam and see what the scores are since we've registered, but next year maybe we'll do a better preparation and take a gap year and go for it. My question being that when we get the NEET score, I just wanted to know that the entry for a post graduation in UK, we want her to settle eventually abroad somewhere and not in India. So doing an MBBS in India and then going to UK for your further education and in getting into the NHS system, is it as simple for a student who's doing MBBS in India and going there versus a student who's done a undergraduate medical degree there? Like, that's what I wanted to evaluate. Like,
Okay, Dr. Khanna, can you answer that? The question is, was it easier to, you're on mute. Was it easy, is it easier to do undergraduate MBBS in the UK and then move on to the postgraduate degree in the UK? Or if someone's done it in India, is it easier to also get? You're on mute, you'll have to unmute yourself, doctor.
I've unmuted myself. Can you
Perfect.
hear me
We
now?
can hear you. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
I'm
Yes,
so
we can hear
sorry
you.
this has happened.
No problem.
Right. So certainly, if you qualify in India, you can still come to United Kingdom by doing the PLAB examination, because that's held by the General Medical Council. But having done your degree in United Kingdom, it makes it much easier for you to do that.
Why would you
Sorry,
say that? The level of difficulty would get higher if you are doing MBBS in India and appearing for PLAB versus getting into the system right from the beginning?
Yeah, because you've done your undergraduate degree here, it makes it much easier to get into the system here. The exams are very similar. The PLAB examination is now very similar to the final year exams of United Kingdom.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Khanna. I can see we're already 10 minutes over time. I just want to thank you on behalf of all the attendees today and our team for taking the time out to speak to us and sharing all these insights on studying medicine in the UK. It's really been a great hour. I've also learned a lot. And of course, we love collaborating with you at the Red Pen. And thank you to all the attendees for taking out the time on a Saturday evening to listen to me and Dr. Khanna speak about studying medicine in the UK. We will be in touch. A follow-up email will be sent to you. So if you want to know more about our program, let us know. And for those that attended late and want to see a recording of the session, that will also be available on our YouTube channel. So you can definitely review it again. Thank you again, Dr. Khanna, and everybody have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.